If you're looking at treating yourself to a new sim racing sequential shifter, you've got a fair bit of choice. There are a few pretty good sequential shifters around at various price points, but following the trend of MOZA releasing high quality products at lower costs, they've just dropped their latest sim racing product, the SGP sequential shifter. And well, as of today, this is now the cheapest dedicated branded sequential shifter you can buy. I've been sent this review unit by MOZA and have been spending the past few weeks putting it through its paces on track, all with the goal of finding out whether this isn't just the cheapest, but if it's also one of the best sim racing sequential shifters you can buy today. Before looking at the design and performance, let's talk money. As I mentioned just now, this is the cheapest branded sequential shifter that I know about. It comes in at just $129 US, and this undercuts many of MOZA's potential competitors and makes this an incredibly attractive proposition for those looking for a sequential shifter. It's worth noting right away that this shifter is currently only PC compatible. Now I'm going to properly kick off this review by taking a look at its design and overall quality, and with pretty much every MOZA product, things look good right away. The design itself is pretty standard for a sequential shifter. It has been packaged nicely with some nice design flair throughout. You get a height adjustable lever that can be moved up and down to change the shifter height, and there's a range of around 65mm or so of adjustability. The handle is constructed entirely from metal and it looks and feels great. However, those who race without gloves and wear a ring may find some scratching or wear over time. Now I haven't tested this theory as I do race with gloves on, but I'd imagine some metal on metal contact could cause some durability issues over time. It is worth stating that this handle can be swapped out easily using a standard M12 screw, so you can even pop on a real world or aftermarket shifter handle if you wish. On the main body and housing of the shifter you get a couple of extra push buttons, which I really like to see. I've primarily been using these as my starter and my ignition, and the extra input that I didn't expect to see was also an additional lever located just behind the hand grip. Now this does come in handy and can be assigned as another input in game, giving you access to features such as a quick neutral selector, a clutch, or even a handbrake. Now pretty much every part of this shifter is constructed from aerospace grade aluminium, making the whole thing pretty durable, and it also makes it look and feel high quality. At this price point, the overall build quality does let the SGP shifter compete with much more expensive options. Now I do want to touch on that additional lever, or as MOZA technically call it, the multifunctional lever. This is a pretty neat feature that MOZA certainly didn't need to build in. Almost no other sequential shifter on the market has this functionality at any price point really. The lever itself utilises a spring to add some resistance. However, the unit I have, the spring inside is incredibly light, making the lever itself feel really light to activate. Now I have been told by MOZA that they have strengthened this spring for the production units, and that the shifter I have was a pre-production model, so this may not be an issue moving forwards. When you activate the lever, it's a direct input, there's no progression there, meaning you can't use it in the same way as you could with a progressive clutch pedal as an example. However, you can program it to control pretty much anything in game. I like to use it as a clutch input, which can be useful if drifting with a 2-pedal set like the Azotec Forte set that I currently use, and I've also used it in some games as a direct reverse gear selector for those moments when I've had a slight whoopsie and ended up facing the wrong way off track. This can save you having to push the shifter multiple times to move all the way through the gears. As mentioned, the 2 push buttons on the body of the shifter are also welcome additions. Again, you can program these to control anything in game, and I've got them set to the starter and the ignition, but you could use them again as direct gear selectors for neutral or reverse, or to control your wipers or headlights as a few examples. If you've used any MOZA products before, these push buttons will look and feel incredibly familiar. They're backlit RGB buttons which can be customised, and the activation is almost identical to the activation on MOZA wheels such as the FSR or the RS V2 wheel. Now let's take a look at how this shifter holds up during gameplay. As with any sequential shifter, you have both push and pull functionality, and the resistance will change slightly depending on how far you extend the lever up or down. You can also change the damping and the actual resistance of each shift by adjusting a screw that sits just inside the body of the shifter. Turning it one way makes each shift a little bit easier to pull, while going the other way stiffens things up. But for my preference, the resistance out of the box is pretty spot on for my liking. You have to put in a good amount of force to get the lever to move in either direction, and once it does, there's a really nice fall off in resistance. Once you get past that point of no return on either a push or pull shift, the lever falls into its farthest position, and there's a really positive activation noise. And the rebound is equally smooth. As soon as you start to release pressure, the shifter falls back into its natural position. There is a second click on the return as it goes back into resting position. Now the clicks themselves are pretty loud, to the point where I could hear it despite wearing headphones, meaning anyone else in the same room or an adjoining room would almost certainly be able to hear it. I measured the shifter noise on my RSV2 steering wheel at around 70 to 75 decibels, while the noise on this sequential shifter tops out at around 85 to 90 decibels. I'll leave it up to you whether you think your partner will be okay with that sound multiple times every minute, but for me, I like it. When activating the shifter, either on the upshift or the downshift, the damping at the full extension position was good. I didn't get any sensation of a harsh contact when fully pulling a shift, and the lever never makes contact with the shifter housing. Inside are a set of contactless hall sensors, similar to most MOZA paddle shifters and pedals, which just ensures good durability over time. My one real niggle with the performance of this shifter was the slight play that you get with the shifter at its neutral position. There is some movement here, meaning you can actually slightly wiggle the lever before activating it in either direction. During the heat of a race, you may not notice this so much, but on occasion, especially when shifting from a downshift to an upshift, you can feel that little bit of wiggle. This can sometimes feel almost like a two-stage activation. The first time you pull the shifter back, the lever moves slightly and hits a point of resistance, and then as you apply more force, the shifter engages properly and falls into its activated position. This is very minor and can go unnoticed, but when I was really concentrating on the shifter while racing, I could certainly notice it. As with most MOZA sim racing products, mounting this SGP shifter is pretty easy. 6 pre-drilled downward facing holes let you mount the shifter to pretty much anything. I've got mine bolted directly to my sim rig using 2 bolts and T-nuts, but you can use this shifter with an adapter or mounting plate just as easily. Unfortunately, much like the MOZA handbrake, there still isn't any way to mount it through the side of the shifter body, and I'd love to be able to attach both the shifter and handbrake together side by side to have a more ergonomic setup. However, if you do have a shifter mounting plate on your sim rig, you could easily achieve this layout style if it's wide enough. Around the back of the shifter are 2 connection ports. These allow you to connect your shifter to your PC directly via USB or directly to your MOZA wheelbase. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's no current console support, restricting the shifter to a PC-only sim racing product. However, with MOZA's recent push into Xbox support with their R3 wheel, who knows whether this will be the same situation next year. And that brings me nicely to the final verdict on this shifter. Really, my overall thoughts are incredibly positive. MOZA once again are producing sim racing products that feel much more premium than their price point and that perform incredibly well. If I were another sim racing brand, I'd seriously be taking a strong look at what MOZA are doing. And if I were in the market for a sequential shifter, I'd snap this SGP shifter up in a heartbeat.